Hey, I'm happy you're here. Alright, so check this out. This one's been on my mind for a while now. I've been wanting to get your opinion since I joined Reddit, but I never really dared to, so here I go. In 2018, a group of friends from college and I decided to go and spend a month in Berlin over the summer. We spent our time between part-time jobs, partying and just simply enjoying the city and its cultural activities. Everyone in the group was cycling places except for me. We had a bit of a bike situation with mine, and so I decided to spend the rest of our time there on foot or using the U-Bahn. It wasn't that much of a bother until we decided to go and party near the River Spree. This place has bars and clubs, and it's overall a great place to party, but from what I recall, public transportation didn't go that far in the middle of the night. They had all cycled there, so I was the only one without means to go back to our apartment. It was a 20-minute cycle from the bar, but it was at least a 35-minute walk. A friend of mine, I'll call her Eva for the sake of this story, decided to walk back with me and just take her bike next to her as to not leave me alone, wandering around the city in the middle of the night. It was about 4 a.m. Here comes the glitch. As we were walking down this rather big street and just chatting, I remember smelling food and seeing this restaurant past the pedestrian crossing to which we were headed. I am a foodie and I was rather hungry, so this was pretty appealing. A woman was sitting there having food, black hair, and I could see her profile through the large windows which took almost the entire wall up to the ceiling. I remember thinking, damn, that's weird that they're still open at this time of the night. I gotta tell Eva when the flow of the conversation allows. As I was walking and starting to cross the road, which was the crossing in front of the restaurant, things got blank and it was like I was on autopilot. I was hearing her voice kind of muffled. Once we were past the restaurant, Eva stopped, turned to me and said, "Wait, wasn't there a restaurant just there with a woman eating?" I had completely forgotten to tell her. It's like my memory had been wiped and restored within seconds, and there it was, now a hotel. The large windows were the same, and inside was the hotel's restaurant, with a layout and tables that looked nothing like what we saw. No woman was eating there either. We were both very shocked and saw that a receptionist, a male with short hair, was in there, and I knew we just had to ask him if somebody was eating there just now. It was just too freaking weird. He was kind of freaked out about us coming in like that and said that he had been alone for hours. After discussing it with Eva, we found out that she saw the woman eating as well, but she only saw her back, and she was seated with her back to the window. However, I could tell this woman was Asian because she was seated showing her profile to me. After that, Eva never wanted to talk about it again. She even got mad when I tried to bring it up again. Also, people seem to have changed around me after this event. Even my mom didn't remember something that she should have. A lot of people seemed different overall. And I must also note that I wasn't drunk, and staying up this late was really common for me at that stage of my life, so sleep deprivation was probably not a factor. Oh, and fun fact, the name of the hotel is the Grimm Hotel, in reference to the author of many fairy tale stories. Oh, but this story is true though. It's not a fairy tale. If you live in Berlin or are planning a visit there and want to see this for yourself, you can. It's in the Alte Jakobstrasse. Feel free to look it up. I heard about this subreddit through a podcast and thought it was the right place to share my story and hopefully get some good insight and opinions from people who may have experienced or know of something similar. In 2012, when I was 16 years old, me and my 6 or so friends went to Thorpe Park. It's a theme park here in the UK. The new ride, The Swarm, had just opened, so of course we were going straight there. We queued for about 45 minutes before being sent to the stands on the second row of about 12 rows. The carriage ahead had just been loaded, and a very large black dude, probably at least 6'7", was placed in his seat. As the ride was about to go, an attendant came over and told this guy that he was too big to ride and had to go wait outside for his party to finish the ride. Now, this guy, like I said, was absolutely huge. Big afro and basically incredibly rememberable. Anyway, after he had been on the ride, I again remember seeing him outside with his friends. They were loudly taking the piss out of him for not being allowed on, basically. Fast forward about 14 months, and we went to Thorpe Park again. I believe it was more or less the same group of friends that I had went with before, give or take maybe 1 or 2 people. Again, we of course went on the swarm. We waited around 45 minutes again, and we were sent to the same stands, second from the front, with my same 3 friends who came on my row last time. As the ride was about to leave, an attendant came over and told a certain gentleman he was too big to ride. As I looked over, it was the exact same person as before. I know for an absolute fact this 6'7" humongous man was the same person from before. I remembered him distinctly. Everything was the same. The way he climbed out of his chair, the way he walked off and went outside. The only thing I don't remember is whether or not it was the same attendant, as I was honestly so flabbergasted about what I was seeing. I turned to my friends and I said, "What the frick? That's the same guy from last time, in the exact situation." Nobody paid much attention to me, but they kind of acknowledged it, I guess. Maybe nobody remembered the time before like I did. I kept going on about it for a few good minutes, but nobody seemed to listen or care. By the time we got off the ride, this time he wasn't waiting with his friends. One of the things that I always found odd about this is the fact that I never remembered seeing this guy in line both times that I went. 45-minute waits each time, and I never once noticed this huge guy standing where he would have been like 30 people ahead of me. And trust me, same huge afro, 6'7" dude, he would have been easily noticed. Since then, I've mentioned it maybe twice to my friends who were there, and they all look at me like I was crazy, or they have a look of, I vaguely remember something. They probably just want me to stop talking. My own assessment is that this really was just the biggest coincidence ever, and it just so happened that myself and this guy ended up going to the same theme park on the same days, on the same ride at the exact same time, and having the exact same situation play out 14 months apart. But that's impossible, right? Now, the person that submitted this next story actually stumbled upon my channel just a day before we asked him for permission to read his story. That might be a glitch in itself. Anyways, Reddit user CyberActive42. Hey, this one's yours. I've always been interested in these stories from people, and I've always loved reading through them. They're unnerving in a way that's really specific, and I felt that yesterday as I was working. I just started a job a few months ago at a local bakery. It's really well known locally, and we do good business right up until closing. Well, yesterday, it was 5 minutes till closing when a guy walks in and starts looking around. I was mildly annoyed, but people who come in late usually have a little self-awareness and leave a bit of a nicer tip. He looked around for a bit and brought up some retail items for me to ring up and bag, specifically 2 jars of jam, a box of scones, and a bag of granola. At this point, we were the only 2 people in the entire building. I reached down to get a bag and put only those items in the bag. I know I only put 1 bag of granola in because they're big, and the other items have to be arranged around it. He's paying with his card, and as I'm looking the other direction for just a moment as he's leaving a tip, he says, "Oh, sorry, I only wanted one bag of granola." I was confused and I told him there was only one bag in there, to which he pointed, and there was a second bag sitting right up against the first, now making the bag bulge. He wanted to know if I'd rang him up for two, to which I said no. We kind of sat there for a second looking back at the extra bag and the receipts in confusion. I really have no idea how the second large bag of granola got there. It's big and has a noisy paper bag. I would have heard him put it in there, much more seen him. He never walked away or moved from the register at all either. I can't really explain it. So, we have this little metal tool that we use to unlock any of the doors in our house if they've been accidentally locked from the inside. The only way I can describe it is that it looks like a tiny crowbar, hook at one end and flat head on the other. We had been keeping this tool in the cabinet area above the air conditioner. Well, around 2 months ago, I had accidentally shut my bathroom door with the lock engaged. I went to grab the tool to unlock the door like always, and it was gone. I checked all around the cabinet and the floor, but it was nowhere. I even checked the tops of the door frames where it used to be, but no. The tool just disappeared. None of us really thought anything of it. I mean, things get lost all the time, and we eventually found another tool that looked different from the original, by the way, to replace it. Well, today, actually around 2 hours ago, my mom had opened that air conditioner cabinet for something, and lo and behold, there was the original tool in its rightful place. And she was so confused. I laughed about it, telling her it was a glitch in the Matrix. She's not really a big believer of things like glitches, but I'm a big fan of glitch stories, so knowing she experienced a glitch along with me was just amusing. This happened 2 years ago when I was staying with my sister, my brother, and his girlfriend. It happened pretty quickly. My brother and my sister and I were all on the bed watching Rick and Morty on Hulu when the TV turned black. I thought it was a server lag or an iffy TV, but after a brief second, I saw myself in the TV. It was almost like the whole TV screen was recording all of us sitting and watching it. After another brief second, it went away and the show started again. I was surprised and scared at what happened and turned to see their reactions, but they claimed to have not seen what I saw. I tried to explain what I saw, but after seeing their reactions, I stopped. Then it got weirder. A couple of weeks later, I was home with my brother's girlfriend and sister. We started talking about something that must have been relevant to what had happened. Sending shivers down my spine as she told her story, I wanted to crawl away from the exact TV in front of us. She told me that, which later I found out happened 4 days after my incident, that when she was watching a show on Hulu, the screen cut off and she saw herself. She was so shocked and surprised that she didn't think anyone would believe her until I told her that it happened to me. My sister had started getting freaked out about the event and didn't want us to talk about it anymore, and we still don't when she's around. To this day, we debate ideas about what it was and if it really actually ever happened. Now that we both have different accounts of the same glitch, I wonder if it's happened to anyone else, or if it can even be explained. This literally just happened to me. I live in an old apartment building across from a large city park, and I was feeling pretty lazy this morning, so I ordered breakfast on Seamless. Because my building is old, the buzzer doesn't always work, so I put in the order that the delivery guy should meet me outside. Then when he was almost there, I would go out front to meet him. The time came, and I looked up, and across the street at one of the park entrances, I saw a woman and her dog. Not an unusual sight at a park in an area where people don't have yards. She had dark hair and wore the kind of outfit normal for walking a dog. Plain black leggings, gray and pink walking shoes, and a white t-shirt with the logo from a city marathon a few years back. Her dog was black and white with a hot pink collar and a leash. She crosses the street with her dog. We exchange a polite greeting as she passed me to go into my building. I guess she's a neighbor. And I think nothing of it. Until I look up and I see her across the street as if she never crossed. She's turning to go into the park. Same woman, same sneakers, same shirt, same dog even with the same collar and leash. This is my first time experiencing something like this. I'm just not sure what happened. So, this happened last year, and for a bit of backstory, I've been a scout since I was 7 years old. We meet up once a week at our base, which is an old-ish building with windows made out of a thick plastic material instead of glass, and a pretty big patio. There is one particular window that I think must have been applied wrong because it constantly slams against the wall at the slightest breeze, and it's the only window in the building that does this. Anyways, last year, we had just started meeting up in person again, and there wasn't much of a protocol yet, so we were just getting together for a few hours and hanging out. On one of those days, one of the girls gets the bright idea to throw rocks at the wall to see if they break. It's dumb, I know, but that's what you get when you put a bunch of bored 15-year-olds together with little supervision. On one of her throws, she accidentally aimed higher and hit the window that slams itself on the wall, and she breaks it. She immediately stopped throwing rocks after that. I remember being pretty bummed out by the window breaking because it had been there for so long, and we joked about it being an end of an era of sorts, but other than that, we quickly moved on from it and went on with our day. The weird part happened next week. We went to the base, and I noticed that the window was still intact. At first, I thought they may have replaced it, which seemed unlikely since they don't really fix anything in the base in such a short notice and without mentioning anything. I ruled it out completely when I heard it slam against the wall again. So I found it pretty much impossible that they would have not only replaced the window less than a week after it was broken, but also replaced it in the same wrong way that it was originally. I later asked the girl that broke the window and other people that saw it happen, and they all confirmed that the window was broken, and they were just as dumbfounded as me as to why it was back together. Well, I'm not quite sure how to explain this, but here it goes. There's something that I once saw, which always seemed strange when I saw it, and from time to time, I remember it again. I've tried to find information about it, but I've never been able to find any mentions of it from other people. I've told a couple of people about it over the years, but no one ever really quite understood. Today, and I'm not sure why, I remembered it again, and this time, I also remembered about this subreddit. So I guess I'll tell you folks about this since if anyone might be in the right mindset to understand, it's you. It was fall of 1995. I was in my college dorm at UT Austin, the Jester dormitory. As a side note, this dorm is so huge at one point, it literally had its own zip code. There's a giant 2-story cafeteria that feeds 2 14-story towers of college students. There are also a number of doors with no handles that lead into windowless areas, which I never saw anyone ever enter or leave. At the time, each room had super fast 500 megabytes per second internet and cable TV. This is all just for context's sake. I don't remember why I was up late with my roommate's TV on in my dorm room on this particular night. However, to this day, I clearly remember what happened next. The TV suddenly went silent. It had been playing late-night garbage infomercials or whatever. At first, I just kept studying, but then my roommate says, "Did you turn the TV off?" I turned to look at the TV, but before I could answer, a video began playing of a camera shot sweeping across a landscape. The sound slowly faded in with just wind noise. "We control what you see. We control what you hear." The camera shot flies into the window of a house, showing a woman putting clothes into a front-load washing machine. Not exactly a common type in '95. I don't recall seeing one in real life until the 2010s. Anyway, suddenly, the woman freezes in place, motionless, and the clothes and water inside the washing machine also freeze, yet the camera keeps zooming around them. There's silence for a moment, and then the voice continues. "In order that you can trust that what you see on the news is real, we intentionally ensure our ability to create a 100% convincing simulation of reality is not misused." As he's speaking, the woman and the clothes in the washing machine morphed from looking 100% photorealistic to looking like 90s era movie special effects, where you could easily tell it's computer generated. Up to this point, however, they had looked completely real. Now, the animation resumes and the now CGI woman closes the washing machine. The camera lowers down and zooms in on the clothes cycling around in the wash. Then, as the clothes in the wash suddenly decomposed into the underlying wireframes of the animation and the water morphed into a sea of ones and zeros, the voice said, "We are the geniuses of the information superhighway." Then, the screen went black for a moment. Suddenly, the video cut back to an in-progress infomercial with the infomercial guy in the middle of a sentence. I quickly hit the mute button and turned to my roommate. "Dude, did you just see that weird ad? What was that even an ad for?" He's like, "What ad? You mean that crappy infomercial that's been playing for the last half hour?" I said, "No, I mean the ad that came on after you asked me if I had turned off the TV." He said, "What? I never asked you that." Then he leans in, says, "Dude, are you on LSD?" I say, "What? No, I mean like 2 minutes ago, you said specifically, did you turn off the TV after it went quiet?" He told me, "This infomercial has been on since 3:30. I looked and I distinctly remember it was 3:38 a.m. And then I described what I had seen to him, and he says, "I think you dreamt that." But I know that I didn't. Does anyone remember seeing this footage? If so, please let me know. My maternal grandmother passed away in January. My mom was very close to her, but I wasn't. She lived far away and I hadn't seen her since I was like 13. When my mom went to gather some of her possessions, she brought me a shirt. It was a very distinct shirt. A small, petite-sized blouse. It was white with blue stripes and blue floral patterns. The brand was Croft & Barrow. I've had it in my possession for months. I was at my mom's house doing laundry yesterday, and I have 2 laundry baskets, a small wicker basket, and a large white hamper. I laundered the clothes in the white hamper first, and when I was folding the first load of clothes, the first shirt I took from the dryer was my grandma's shirt. I folded it and put it at the bottom of the white hamper, and then I moved on. I did 2 more loads of laundry that day, The next load of clothes, I was checking them to see if they were dry, and I saw my grandmother's shirt in there. Again, it's a very distinct pattern compared to the rest of my clothes. I don't do a lot of stripes and I don't own any other blouses. I was confused because I thought I had just folded it, but hey, I figured maybe I was just being forgetful. But the tag looked different. The brand said something different entirely. But I figured maybe I was just misremembering the brand. I was then asking myself, did my mom put this shirt in here? Did she give me two similar shirts? So I restart the dryer and I let them go a little longer. Then when it stops, I fold it and I end up coming across my grandma's shirt with a weird feeling. I folded it and put it in the wicker basket. Today, I'm putting away all of my laundry. I emptied the white hamper first, and at the bottom is my grandma's shirt, Croft & Barrow, sized petite. At this point, I'm really confused. I move on to the wicker basket. No similar shirt in there whatsoever. And I just feel so weird and confused about the whole thing. What the heck happened? The day after she passed, I was very upset. I wanted to be alone, so I went to a creek and I ended up finding 10 heart-shaped rocks in one spot. That's my story. Not super dramatic, but I hope you liked it. Alright, so check this out. I was bored at home alone. I FaceTimed my best friend, who lives in the apartment building next to mine, and I asked him if he would join me on a walk around the neighborhood. But he wasn't around. He was on his way back home from school, which is understandable because it was a Thursday afternoon. There's a jogging circuit near my house. It's like 500 meters away. Due to my massive boredom, I put on my sport clothes. It's a basic t-shirt and some shorts, and the shorts have no pockets. Remember this detail. I then was headed with my music, vibing to the circuit. Arriving there, it was surprisingly not that empty. There was around 8 to 10 people in that 15-kilometer circuit. I started walking for a bit and then ran for a couple of kilometers and then laid down in the grass. I noticed two guys on a motorcycle going back and forth. I didn't care that much since I was FaceTiming my two best friends. It was getting late and it was now around 6 p.m. and I was exhausted. I walked home, but I took another path that's kind of a shortcut. I had to walk through an empty big street with buildings in construction. I've taken this path many times before with no problems. I had a feeling that someone was watching me and following me. I turned around and I noticed the same two guys on that motorcycle were heading towards me. I whispered to my friends on FaceTime that something weird is going to happen and they have to cut their mics and focus with me. Well, the guys came by and one of them asked me where is the nearest barbershop. Out of stress, I just gave them a random location. While the rider of the bike asked me about the barbershop, my right eye twitched and unfocused. I do have this ability, but I was still able to see with it. I saw in the bike's rearview mirror that the other guy was trying to look at where my phone was located. It was between my shorts and my belly because I had no pockets and I had my earphones in. I was freaking out. Time was starting to slow down. Seconds felt like hours and I couldn't feel my legs anymore. They eventually went on, but with a slow speed. It was like they were planning a backup plan or something. I had three options. There was a taxi guy fixing his car. I could have went to him and explained the situation, but my gut said what if they noticed me and then came back to carry on with their plan. Option number 2 was to stop a random car and hop in, then explain the situation, but my gut says no. What if the car was locked? Plus, the guys would have noticed that I knew what they were planning to do and came to me after the random car went on. Or option 3, and this is the one that I chose, was to run in the opposite direction into traffic and take the path that I came by. I instinctively ran for 5 straight minutes. I entered a field and started running towards some slums. I looked back and I saw the guys were coming after me into the field, and one of them was shouting, "Just stop, we just want to know where the barber shop is." There's one thing about me, and it's that I always trust my gut. And today, my gut said no, run as fast as you can or you will die today. And that's what I did. I ran between the slums and kept running until I arrived near my best friend's house, who I was still FaceTiming with. I told him to come downstairs right away, and I laid down in the parking lot. He came in and was freaked out because he knew that something was happening but didn't know what, since I didn't give him any more information. My face turned a pale yellow and I threw up. I couldn't feel my legs or my arms anymore, and he walked me to my house and I laid down, and from that moment, I don't remember anything. I just remember me waking up the following day with bruises on my leg due to me running into the field full of pikes. This happened about a year ago, but I still think about it. Me and my friends had the munchies and we wanted some Taco Bell at 2 a.m. We were all females and between the ages of 17 and 19 at the time. We took my mom's car and went on our journey. On our way home, though, my friends took a wrong turn and ended up in a cul-de-sac. As we were turning around, a resident on the street gets into his truck and starts pulling out right in front of our car. Us, thinking he's going out somewhere, waits for him to go, but he just sits there for a second before getting out and coming towards the driver's side. I'm sitting in the driver's side in the rear, so I can see him in clear view. He walks up to my friend who's in the driver's seat and he starts yelling at her to slow down and that she's going too fast up and down the street, and so on and so on. We're all just listening in disbelief because she was going like 16 miles an hour in the 25, but whatever. Until he started banging on my friend's window and tried opening her door. Now think about this. Why would somebody be trying to break into a car full of teenage girls? What were they trying to do? I snap out of my shock and I yell at my friend to drive away because I'm just done with this situation. She pulls off and he jumps in his car behind us. I decide to stick my entire upper half of my body out the window to yell at this guy and to also give my friends directions back to my house. Keep in mind it's now after 2 a.m. and all of our phones are dead or at 1%. He ends up in front of us and cornered us in another cul-de-sac just up the street, all while my friend is driving in people's lawns just to get away. Eventually, he followed us all the way home. My friends ran inside to let my mom know what was happening, and I run straight for the car to yell at this guy. He asked me what I yelled out of the car to him, and so I told him exactly what I said and exactly what I called him, expletives and all. He gets even more upset and almost gets out of the car when he sees my mom come out of the house, and now he tries to leave, so I stood behind his truck, yelling the license plate numbers out loud. She makes it to him and his entire demeanor changes, and now he's acting all innocent, like he was scared. I was told to go inside, and my mom obviously gives him some words of wisdom. She tells me he followed us home because someone ran over his dog a while back because they were speeding through his street, which I don't believe and still gives no excuse to following teenage girls home. So, to the bald man in the red truck, you better hope we don't ever meet again. It was around 7 a.m. and I was on my way to work. I was a little late, but I decided to stop by a gas station. It was only 2 minutes away from work, so I thought, hey, I'm already late. What's another 5 minutes? I was never late, by the way, only once in a blue moon. I pulled up to pump number 1 on my left. The pump next to me was taken by, I think, a Mustang. I'm not too good with cars, so it could have been anything. The owner was finished putting gas in it. I went into the gas station, grabbed some stuff that I needed, and I was at a quarter of a tank of gas and decided to fill up. I paid and walked out, and the car that was there was now gone. On my way to my car, a blue car pulled up taking the same spot. I wasn't paying that much attention to it as I got to my car and put all my stuff down in the passenger seat, but as I did, I got this weird feeling. You know how people say that you can just feel when somebody's staring at you? I believe wholeheartedly now that you can. I had to turn around and face the pump at this point because I obviously had to pump my gas, and when I did, I briefly saw the guy in the driver's seat in that blue car. It doesn't really matter the race or anything, but he was a white, older guy wearing a hat. At first, I didn't see much and I was minding my own business, but we had locked eyes. I began pumping gas and I locked it so that I could go back to my car and mind my own business, and out of my peripheral, I saw it. His hand was moving up and down his lap, his fingers locked around his thing. I really didn't know what to do. I jumped into my car, not wanting to wait outside, and I could see that he was still staring at me hardcore. He wanted me to see him. Once my car was full, I was so petrified to get out and close my cap, but I had to do it, so I did, keeping my eyes straight forward and not towards him at all. I put everything back, literally got in my car and booked it out of the gas station. I kept my eyes on the road and the rearview mirror to make sure that he wasn't following me. Thankfully, he wasn't. I made it to work safe, but it was on my mind all day, and I was blown away. I mean, who does that? Who gets off on someone being uncomfortable? And yeah, I know I should have called the cops or got his license plate, but all I was thinking about was getting the heck out of there. But on my lunch, I went back and I told the employees what happened, and they said that they would look at the cameras. I gave them my info and told them to call if they caught it, but it's been a few days now, and I don't think they're going to be calling. It was nearing Christmas of 2021, and by that, I mean that it was mid-November. I live in the US, so Christmas and holiday items tend to go up in October. Being that I was, at the time, a 16-year-old female, I always tried to get my shopping done early because a lot of my gifts were handmade. For a bit of background, there are a lot of shops, small grocery stores, as well as the local uptown within walking distance of my house. It was at the uptown where this occurred. One of my brothers, Anthony, was really into music and learning different instruments, so I decided to go to the specific store in the uptown that sold music supplies. Because of my schedule, I wasn't able to go until well after 4 p.m., which is when the sun started to set. In hindsight, I shouldn't have tried to go, but I was desperate enough to finish my gift shopping by the first week of December. I stopped at our local Dollar General to get some paint that I had run out of, and then ran across the street to the uptown for Anthony's music supplies. While crossing the street, I saw a large brown truck stopped at the intersection. I hadn't seen a truck of that color in town, or ever, before, so it was pretty noticeable. I also noticed that it was turning into the uptown parking lot. Same as me. One thing about our uptown is that the majority of it is bars and restaurants, so there were quite a lot of people just mingling around some of the bars. It did make me a bit nervous, but the music store was close, so I just decided to tough it out. As I was entering the store, the brown truck slowly crept by me. I was kind of spooked, but I figured whoever it was just being careful of the people around us. The store didn't end up having what I needed, so I placed an order for the following week, and then I left the shop. By now, it was well into dusk. As soon as I left, I saw the truck parked right outside the store. I brushed it off as if they were just in the store next to me, and then I went to leave. As soon as I turned my back, I saw the lights of the truck go on and the engine roared to life. I basically peed myself right then and there. I turned to look and see who was in the car, but the windows were so heavily tinted that I don't even know how they were able to see out. The car pulls out and slowly creeps towards me, and I'm paralyzed. I figured I was going to be kidnapped and murdered right there on the spot. I found my nerve to run when the car was only 6 feet away, and I booked it down the sidewalk. The car started to go faster and match pace with me, and the people from the bars didn't seem to notice or care. I was crying at this point, and I didn't know what to do. That's when I saw my saving grace. I saw 2 ladies, a little younger than my mom, outside a coffee shop that had just closed. I saw that they spotted me, and I took a chance and ran up to them, and I told them my situation. The pink shirt coffee lady had to leave, but gave the key to the lady in the blue shirt, who offered to let me stay inside the cafe until my mom could come get me. The brown truck drove past a few times and then finally gave up. My mom shows up a few minutes later. I thank the blue coffee lady for her help, and I still go to their shop regularly, during the day. Thank you so much to the pink and blue coffee ladies, because you probably saved my life that day. And to the people driving that brown truck, please, let's never meet again. I was leaving the gym the other afternoon, and I was awkwardly exiting behind a middle-aged man. He was pretty well dressed to be exiting a gym. He held the door open for me, but then began keeping pace with me when I headed toward the direction that my car was parked in. He began talking to me, just politely at first, and I realized he had a strong accent, like a European one. And I'm bad with recognition of specific ones, but I just know it was European. Well, he quickly changed the conversation from normal small talk to asking me if I was single. I quickly said no, and I tried to speed up, but he kept pace with me. He seemed upset by this and moved a little closer to my side as we walked through the parking lot together. He said, "Would you leave him for me? You're beautiful. I could take good care of you." I know I made some kind of face because he grinned like he knew that I was now uncomfortable, and he was excited by that. "I'm in a happy relationship," I deadpanned, seeing that my car was just 4 more spaced down, and now I'm considering just running for it. There was no one else in the parking lot except us. "Would you give me your number?" He was already taking out his phone as he asked me this. He says, "I'll text you, so you'll have mine in case you change your mind." "No, thank you," I quickly said, "if you'll excuse me," as I continued to speed up. And thankfully, he stopped at the car 1 space before where I was parked. I half jogged to my car, risking a glance back towards him. He was watching me intently, and my gut told me he was waiting to figure out which car was mine. Well, as I unlocked the door, I saw him start speedwalking toward me. Sped up by fear, I jumped into my car and I immediately locked the doors. I quickly turned my key and threw my car into reverse as he reached my door. Without even checking to see what was behind me, I hit the gas and I pulled out of the space. I saw him pull his phone back out and seemingly take a picture as I accelerated by him. I was shaking with fear as I pulled out of the parking lot. I had no pepper spray and no weapon on me. I really don't know what he would have done if he'd reached me before I could lock my car. I'm afraid that he got a picture of my license plate or something. Was this a trafficking attempt or just some creep? Either way, I won't be going back to that gym. So, about 5 or 6 days ago, everyone was asleep. I was doing some schoolwork in my room and it was 2:24 a.m. when I heard loud banging knocks on my door. It was so loud. There were 2 loud knocks followed by 2 doorbell rings quickly after. After I heard that, my heart just dropped because this has never happened before, and it felt like my soul left my body because we weren't expecting anyone, and it's too late to be coming and knocking so aggressively on the door anyway. After I heard that, I called my parents and they picked up after the 4th call because, well, they were in a deep sleep. And now my parents were up and I told them what I had heard. As soon as they woke up, another 2 knocks and 2 doorbell rings, and this time they heard it, very loud and clearly too. And I verified we had no one coming over at this time. If we did, we would get a call first. And again, 2 minutes after the last knock I heard, we heard it once more with the same pattern. At this time, it was the 3rd time that they had done this, so I was shaking because I was so terrified. I called the police and they said they had police on the way after I explained everything. The operator was saying maybe someone got the wrong house and accidentally knocked on your front door. Then I said even if it was the wrong door, who would knock this loud and ring the bell every 2 or 3 minutes? I ended the call with the operator after they said the police were on the way. As soon as I ended this call, I heard another 2 loud knocks and 2 more doorbell rings. So, guess what? I picked up my phone and I called 911 right back after ending the call, literally just 30 seconds ago, and I told them to tell the police to come fast because I had just heard the knocks again. They said they were on the way already and that they would be there soon. I stayed on the call with the operator this time. After the last round of door knocking and bell ringing, they didn't do it again. The police arrived after 5 minutes and used their flashlights to look at the front of my house. They came and rang my bell, but I was too scared to go down and open the door for the police, so I told the operator I wouldn't go down because I didn't feel safe at my own house at this time. So the police officers continued to look with their flashlights in the front of my house. The operator put me on hold to be with another caller, and she said that she just got a call from the same neighborhood 2 or 3 doors down, stating that they were having the same problems. And the police went to their house too, and they rang the bell and used their flashlights to see the front of the house. They said that they couldn't find anybody and that they would continue to search the streets. They probably made 5 or 6 rounds around the street and said that they couldn't find anything. So we ended the call on that note, and no sounds were heard after that. But we again called about 1 hour later to ask for any updates. They said they still didn't know what happened and didn't find anything and guessed that some kids were probably just ding-dong ditching. But this was just their speculation. I'm still just so scared that somebody was trying to break in. Alright, so check this out. This story is 100% true and honestly, the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. At the age of 15, I moved to Southwest Houston. I had moved around for many years, primarily due to being in foster care and not really having a strong support system or family. Houston itself is somewhat nice, but naturally I had to be placed in a home in probably one of the most ghetto parts of the city. I was honestly one of the only Caucasian people in the area, which made it somewhat difficult to make friends due to cultural differences and so on. I did meet a guy named David who had a girlfriend at the time. We soon became very close and he became very flirtatious and somewhat protective over me. I also noticed that he was deeply involved with drugs and had some major anger issues. I didn't realize how truly mentally unstable he was until after hanging around him and his girlfriend for maybe a few months. One day, we skipped school and went to the nearest skate park. Naturally, as young burnouts, we just lounged around, smoked some weed, spray painted and kept busting our asses on the ramps at the park. After about 30 minutes, we were approached by several guys wearing all black clothing. I recognized a couple of them from my biology class. Next thing I knew, they began attacking David. He was thrown onto the ground, being kicked and punched repeatedly. I did my best to try and pry them off of David, but that only ended in me receiving several blows to the stomach and several other areas of my body until I could barely get up. That day, we both ended up in the emergency room. David told me not to breathe a word to anyone about what happened, which only created more problems for me. But I listened because, for some odd reason, I trusted him. A week later, David found me in the hallway early in the morning before first period. He pulled me to the side and looked around anxiously, his eyes darting back and forth between different parts of the hallway. "What's going on?" I asked, completely thrown off by his sudden, erratic behavior. "Those guys are going to pay for what they did to us," he whispered softly. Nervously, I asked, "What do you mean?" He says, "I have a gun, and Miranda has one too. I'm going to take care of these jerks today. Go home," he said through gritted teeth, reaching into his backpack and slowly revealing a black handgun. I quickly placed my hand on his, pushing his hand further down into the backpack. "David, don't let anyone see that," I whispered quickly. My heart was pounding, my head was spinning, and I felt a deep pit in my stomach. My mind was racing 90 miles an hour. What is wrong with him? Why did his girlfriend Miranda also have a gun? What do I do? Oh no. I was totally in awe. He says, "I don't want you to get hurt. I need to protect you, both of you. I trust you, and I know that you won't tell anyone," he said quietly, his eyes softening. My thoughts continued to race, and I did the only thing that I thought I could. That's try to get away from him and tell someone immediately. "All right, whatever you're going to do, just wait. Let me get my foster sisters out first, okay?" He nodded, and surprisingly, he let me go. I raced down 2 flights of stairs across the school courtyard and finally made it to the principal's office. I opened the door without even knocking, which did piss our principal off, but I cut him off before he could say anything, and I told him David F. and Miranda H. both have handguns. They both brought guns into the school. A few minutes later, the school was put into lockdown, and my only 2 friends that I had that entire school year were arrested. There were news reports, officers questioned me, and as you could imagine, I was grounded for quite a while for my choice of friends. I later decided to move away from that area because I wasn't sure what would happen to me if they somehow got out while I was still there. I don't know if they really planned to use the guns on campus or not. I just know that I was really scared. For me, for the other students, and for the faculty. All I know is that maybe I saved someone's life that day, and I don't regret it. When I was 19 years old, I was fresh out of high school and had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. For some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to go to school to become an EMT, even though I have a weak stomach and wasn't even sure that I wanted to work in the medical field at all. Hitting the books, training, and testing wasn't even difficult. It was basic information that would help keep someone alive long enough to get them to the emergency room, and that's really about it. The thing about EMT school and just about any type of medical training is that you're required to do clinicals. For us, we had to do 7 ride-along shifts that were 12 hours each and 2 ER shifts that were 12 hours. Most of my clinical shifts weren't major, broken toes, elderly falls, and maybe 1 or 2 actual life-threatening situations. I thought it was bad enough when we transported a guy who nearly sawed off his own ring finger while working, but my very last clinical shift gave me nightmares for weeks and made me decide I never wanted to work in the medical field. That night, I chose to do a shift in an emergency room in East Texas. From 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., I'd be basically following nurses around, doing random things such as grabbing needles for them, syringes, etc. Around 9 p.m., the ER got completely hectic and looked just like an episode out of an ER TV show. There was shouting coming from the electronic doors that led out to the ambulance bay. Next thing I know, I'm being told to stay put while 4 EMTs quickly rolled in a man strapped to a gurney. Over 90% of his body was completely burned. Most of the time, I was told to keep out of the way, but I still got to see everything. His name was Michael, and he was about 30 years old. He was severely burned from head to toe. The nurses and the trauma doctors worked quickly to try and save his life. The weird thing was, when they pumped his stomach, they found that it was filled with gasoline. Another thing is that normally when someone catches on fire, the fabric from their clothes basically melts into their skin. And there was no fabric, nothing that had melted to him, which essentially means that he had been naked at the time he caught on fire. The doctors pumped him full of medication, placed him on a ventilator, and performed emergency surgery, and so on. The entire room was covered in blood, iodine, scalpels, needles. The floor had bloody shoe prints from everyone frantically moving around and walking through the blood. I can't even begin to describe the smell, but if you can imagine the smell of a burning corpse, that would be it. Once the doctors said there was nothing more they could do, the family was brought in. The mother of this gentleman stated that she knew it was self-inflicted. He had previously been hospitalized several times due to mental illness. The only thing that we could conclude was that he took his clothes off, poured gasoline all over himself, drank it, and then set himself on fire. Once they officially pronounced Michael as dead, I was allowed to enter the room. I was required to put on gloves and a full medical bodysuit though. After that, I was required to help lift the body up and position it in various angles while the crime scene photographer took photos and the coroner prepared to take the body to the morgue. His eyes were completely white, something that usually happens whenever someone fully passes away. Pieces of skin and blood covered my gloves and my shoes. The medical bodysuit I was wearing was covered in it as well. After we were done, I ran into the nearest bathroom and hurled. This was honestly the most brutal way I've seen someone die. I barely slept, and when I did, I had constant nightmares about Michael. I mean, it's tragic enough, but to go out in such a terrible way and suffer? I can't imagine. If you were able to listen to this next story and follow along on Google Maps, please do. I was on an assignment for the Army, making my way up from San Antonio, Texas to Tacoma, Washington. It was a long drive, and they gave me 6 days to report to my new unit, but I didn't mind. I love road trips. There's nothing like the freedom of exploring the world by yourself. The first day of my journey, I planned to get as much driving in as possible so I could spend a few days in Utah, a sort of mini vacation, you could say. This was January and the days were short, so maximizing the amount of daylight I had was crucial. I got up extra early that morning, carried the last of my bags out to my Corolla, signed out of my old unit, and hit the road at roughly 5 a.m. It was an amazing day. I saw the landscape transform around me as I headed farther west than I had ever been in my life. From the San Antonio metropolitan area to the savannas of the Edwards Plateau, to the pancake flat farmland of the Great Plains region, America's breadbasket. Finally, the farms opened up into prairie and I saw the "Welcome to New Mexico, Land of Enchantment" sign. Now, I was really in the middle of nowhere. Continuing on US Route 380, I eventually found myself in Roswell. I could have gotten a few more hours of driving in and made it to Albuquerque, but I figured since I was in no rush, I might as well see what Roswell had to offer. Who knows if I would get a chance to visit again. As a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious, as Mr. Ballin would say, I took a self-guided tour of the shops and the attractions. The next day, I continued to Albuquerque, then westward on Interstate 40. By the time I reached Gallup and started northbound on US Route 491, I still had 2 hours of driving left before crossing the border into Colorado, and another 45 minutes before I would get to Cortez, my planned stop for the night. However, my daylight was already running out as sunset was at 6 p.m. I got Starbucks and refreshed myself for the final stretch. It was supposed to be easy, just a straight shot. But looking back on it now, I figured that had I decided to stop in Albuquerque instead of Roswell the night previous, I would have already been in Colorado by now and possibly making my way into Utah. I would have saved myself from what was waiting for me on that desolate highway. Route 491 stretched far into the Navajo Nation. On either side of me were endless expanses of prairie bookended by dark indigo mountains on the horizon. To my left, the sky glowed a faint orange-purple, the light slowly dying down like smoldering embers in a fire until finally plunging the land into darkness. Every now and then, I would see the forlorn headlights of another car passing by, which gave me a bit of relief that I wasn't alone. I also had my road trip playlist on to keep me company, and call me ironic, but Hotel California was playing. After passing the small, lonely town of Newcomb, the next piece of civilization would be Shiprock. However, between the two was a 36-mile stretch of absolute nothingness, an abyss that I had to cross. I wasn't ready for what I was about to witness. After several miles, and having not seen another car on the road, I saw something strange emerge from the horizon. Barely lit by the moonlight, I thought it was a road sign at first. Then, as I came closer, I realized it was a person walking on the shoulder of the road, heading in my direction. I squinted, trying my hardest to focus on the figure. In the darkness, I could tell they were wearing a poncho of some sort with long black hair flowing down past their chest. Who could be walking out here all alone at night? I thought. Whoever it was, they had no lights, no reflectors, no strobes of any kind to signal to passing cars that they were even there, and they walked on the pavement, dangerously close to oncoming traffic. I pulled to the left a bit, giving them a wide berth. Suddenly, my stereo cut out, as if I'd turned it off. The screen went completely dark and my phone disconnected from Bluetooth. While this was unusual, it certainly did happen from time to time, so I thought nothing of it. As I approached, I saw the person raise their right arm, as if to flag me down and hitch a ride. Oh, no. I thought, there's no way that's happening, buddy. As my headlights swept by, I realized it was a man dressed in a button-up shirt, a wool poncho, jeans, and cowboy boots. His large belt buckle glinted as the lights passed him. But in that split second, I realized with abject shock that not only were his eyes painfully wide open, but they seemed to be tracking me. Somehow, he was able to see through the glare of my headlights and look me dead in the eyes, not breaking contact until I passed. I was shaken for a bit, but my nerves gradually subsided. My stereo abruptly turned back on and my music continued playing. I brushed everything off as simply my imagination. The darkness and the shadows just playing tricks on my mind. Besides, the man was behind me. I figured he must have been drunk. Indian reservations, sadly, had high rates of alcoholism. I looked in my rearview mirror, and he was gone. I couldn't see him. Maybe he's too far behind me? No, that couldn't be. It must be too dark. Yeah, that's it. I drove on, trying to figure out what had just happened, but at the same time, forcing myself not to think about it. Just when I thought I had moved on, I saw another shape in the distance, getting closer. I realized it was another figure, another person walking alone at night? No, there's no way. They walked along the shoulder of the road, swaying back and forth. Slowly, I could make out that this person was also wearing a poncho. Then I saw what looked like long, black hair reaching down past the chest. No, there's no way. It was the man. It was the same man. But how? The man raised his arm again, trying to flag me down. What did this guy want? But I kept up my pace, with no intention of stopping for any reason. Just like last time, my stereo turned off again. Suddenly, the man leapt out onto the road, arms waving frantically. I swerved into the left lane, narrowly avoiding him. In my headlights, I noticed he had the same wide-eyed look. His gaze was locked onto mine. I also saw that his clothes didn't look as they did on the first encounter. At first, they were clean, if not well worn, but now they were soiled and tattered, rags just barely hanging on to his withered frame. His hair was wild and unkempt, with clods of dried dirt stuck on the locks, but his eyes remained the same. My heart nearly burst through my chest at the sudden shock. Hyperventilating, I slowed down and glanced into the rearview mirror to make sure he was all right. Nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. The man was running. He was sprinting towards me. I centered the wheel and accelerated, hoping to get as much distance from him as possible. But as I continued to speed up, so did he. Faster and faster I drove, but every time I looked in the mirror, I would still see him right behind me, perfectly keeping pace, his body tinted red by my taillights. I could feel my temples throbbing and my hands getting slick with sweat on the steering wheel. I was sick to my stomach. I mean, there's no way. I looked forward, hoping to see a faint glimmer of light from the town ahead, but I was still too far away. I looked back at the rearview mirror, and the man was gone. I should have been relieved, but I knew better. Where did he go? I looked around, hoping to regain a visual on him, and I couldn't see anything. Well, taking a deep breath, I refocused on the road, but I kept my guard up. Just keep driving, I told myself. Only a few more miles to go. Out of the corner of my right eye, I saw something. Another shape. It wasn't the man, at least I didn't think so. I glanced over, bracing myself for whatever was going to meet my sight. It looked like some kind of animal, though I couldn't make out exactly what it was. Under the moonlight, I could see it running alongside my car, its forelimbs reaching out in long strides, its back undulating like a dog. Closer and closer it came. The closer it was, the more of it I could see, little by little. Then I noticed its limbs were far too long for its body. Its body was too short. It had no tail. The head was oddly round, and from it came a trail of long, black hair. I slammed my foot on the gas, pushing my car's engine harder than it had ever been pushed before. By now, I was clocking well over 110 miles per hour, but this creature just kept up. It wasn't phased. It simply ran faster and faster to match my speed. What was this thing? How could anyone or anything run this fast? The entity seemed to have endless stamina. just how long could it keep this up? How much faster could it go? Soon, my car would hit its top speed. And then what? How long could it maintain that before breaking down? It wouldn't be long until my engine overheats, but regardless, I would eventually run out of gas. And when I do, what would happen if that thing got me? At 120 miles per hour, my car had reached its limit. This was the fastest I could go, but the creature continued its pursuit. My temperature gauge was approaching the red, and so was my tachometer. I couldn't keep this up any longer. Suddenly, like the beacon of a lighthouse in a tumultuous sea, the first light of Shiprock came into view. It was close, so close. If I could just go a little longer, I could make it into town, to safety. I pressed on. I fixed my eyes on the lights growing brighter on the horizon. They bloomed outwards, glimmering in the night air. Though it was a small town, it was a sight for sore eyes in my situation. Looking in my peripheral, I saw the undulation of the creature's spine as it kept pace with my car. But now, it was slipping away, steering farther and farther from the road. It suddenly hit me just how hard my heart was beating. Beads of sweat dripped down my face. I looked over, and the creature was gone, but this time, the feeling of dread had also gone with it. My stereo once again turned back on, and as my music resumed, I breathed a deep sigh of relief. I let off the accelerator, and the man, or the creature, whatever it was finally gone for good. Having white-knuckled the steering wheel the whole time without even realizing it, my hands were extremely sore, but I was glad to have made it through. A week later, I told another soldier in my unit about what I had experienced. Being originally from Albuquerque, she was familiar with the Native American legends of the Southwest. The conversation steered toward a certain creature that she would not dare speak the name of. She also told me that the highway I took was well known for all sorts of paranormal phenomena. Google what Route 491 used to be called, and everything will make sense. Be careful out there. It's Friday morning, and I'm sitting here waiting for my truck to be loaded for work. It got me thinking about my other job and the strange things that I had been witness to while working it. I've shared a few of the bigger encounters already, but I'll share a few more of the not-so-big ones, but still frightening things that I've witnessed. To start, I'm a 43-year-old female who now drives truck for a living, but back in the day, when I was pretty and young, I decided to work as an exotic dancer. The job paid well, and in Western Canada, where I'm from, it meant that I got to travel from club to club every week and meet lots of new and, well, interesting people. It also meant that I spent a lot of time in different hotels. Most strip clubs in Western Canada are in a bar attached to a hotel. Most of these hotels are older, and as you can imagine, there are restless spirits in many of them. This first story happened in Fort St. John at a club called the Condil. I was still a rookie dancer, and it was my first time there. I didn't own a car yet, so a new friend I had made in my last job had offered to give me a ride there. Once we arrived and I was lugging my 2 heavy suitcases up the stairs with his help, we both noticed and remarked on a subtle but tangible feeling of darkness and oppression in the hallway. My new friend, Scott, and I were both sensitive to spirits, and we could feel that this place had them in abundance. He helped me to my room and bid me goodbye. As I normally did every week, I began to unpack, putting my clothes in the dresser, my costumes hung in the closet, and finally my makeup and body care bottles on the dresser before turning on the TV and sitting back on the bed. That's when it happened. I heard a loud thud, and all of a sudden it was as if a giant hand swept across the entire dresser, flinging everything on it across the room violently. I won't lie, I had my 2 suitcases open and was repacking everything within minutes. There was no way I was staying there alone. Then, all of a sudden, the door to the room opened and in walked another girl with a suitcase. I had noticed the other bed, but had not thought that it could possibly mean that I was going to have a roomie. We stared at each other for a second, me in the middle of packing and her in the doorway. She says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting the heck out of here." I gave her a quick rundown of what had happened, all the while continuing to pack. Her face grew concerned, and when she saw that I was meant to leave, she said, "You'll get in trouble." "Ask me if I care," I told her. She says, "What about me? I don't want to stay here alone after hearing all that." Finally, I paused. I didn't know this girl, but I hesitated to leave her here alone. What she had said was also true. Blowing off a booking wouldn't get me in trouble with the agency. I said, "All right, I'll stay if you promise to spend nights here with me and not just take off." She gave her word, which, of course, by Wednesday she had broke, and I found myself alone in that hotel on more than one night. Every time I would leave the room, the lights in the long hallway, which were always on, would go off just behind me. There were knocks and strange sounds of whispers, but luckily I didn't see any specters. That happened at this next hotel. A few years into my dancing career, and I was working in the town of Rocky Mountain House. I had been to this club and hotel a few times before, but because my dad had lived about an hour's drive, I'd never stayed at the hotel. This was another one of those situations where 2 girls would share an accommodation, in this case, a partial suite. It was the first show of the week. I was upstairs in the room and sitting on the floor with a large mirror propped up in front of me. The other girl was on first, and as I was getting ready in front of the mirror, I thought to myself, "Where is she? She's gonna be late." No sooner did I have the thought when I saw her walk behind and past me into her bedroom. She didn't acknowledge me or turn the light on and just disappeared into the dark room. I didn't think much about it though. I just continued to get ready, but her show was in 5 minutes. Maybe she forgot. Did she lay down for a moment and accidentally fall asleep? I decided to go and wake her. I went to the door and peered in, but the room was empty. She wasn't there. But I had seen her, or at least what I thought was her, the solid shape of a girl with long dark hair going into the room. Now, in truth, this hotel always gave me the heebie-jeebies, but now I was seeing ghosts in there. It explains a lot, actually, why I was always cold when I was in that room, no matter how many blankets or layers I had on. When the other dancer walked through the door, I was pretty shaken and ashen-faced. I told her what had happened, about seeing a spirit that I thought was her, and she pretty much just brushed it off and we finished the night's shows. In this week, for some reason that I can't remember, I wasn't able to stay at my dad's. I asked the other girl if she was planning to stay at the hotel as well, and she said that she had a friend who lived in town that she'd be staying with. That was a hellish week. Whatever lived there would not leave me alone, pulling my hair, creating cold spaces right in front of me, and whispering my name and other things beside me. I've tried very hard my whole life not to hear or to interact with spirits. All I can say is old hotels and bars often equal restless spirits. Alright, so check this out. When I was younger, I was left suspended in the air for a split second. When I was about 17, I was playing football, or soccer for my American friends, with my mates at the park. I jumped up to head the ball. I'm a pretty short dude. I'm not exactly the most athletic person, so it's not like I was trying to jump like Michael Jordan or anything. But I can safely say I've never jumped higher than I did that time, either before or since. I felt like I wasn't going to stop. When I reached my apex, I stopped in midair, and it was only for a brief moment, but I felt my body become weightless before I began my descent. I'm trying my best not to say that I floated, but that's how it felt. I wasn't even going to bring it up with my friends at the time. Although it confused me, I knew if I said anything, they would have just shrugged me off, so I wasn't going to bother. It wasn't until everyone was asking me how I was able to jump so high and stating that they saw me stop midair that I started to freak out. Having them all confirm that they actually saw what happened made me think that this was a real glitch. Maybe this is super common, I don't know. We don't have cable, but we've always had an antenna for local channels. I was sitting with my husband just now and I was thinking, even though we usually stream our favorite shows and movies, I find myself having to leave the room during important live sporting events because I just totally F up the antenna and the incoming picture. The picture is always messed up and the connection is so bad that I'm happy to step out because I know it probably bugs my husband. I just can't stand the skipping sounds and the messy delayed picture when I'm near it. What prompted me to post this has occurred in our previous house as well. We moved about 8 months ago. And these antenna anomalies happen with multiple antennas as well. And now that I think about it some more, it's always been an issue, but just for me. Sometimes I'll be by myself wanting to check out a current news event and I just can't because the antenna is so jumbled. But my husband will have no problem. He's watching some racing event right now and I can hear it running with no problem as I'm typing this. But as soon as I walked by the antenna to grab some laundry, the TV begins to skip. I remember laughing about it in our previous house too. Does this happen to anybody else?
We had to go out of state so I could get surgery and ended up being gone for just over a week. When we got back, my boyfriend decided he needed to cut the grass. Our lawnmower is kept in our locked shed, only we have the key, in our fenced-in backyard. It's an electric mower, very angular and lime green. It also doesn't work and he was going to try to fix it. He came in from the outside and asked me, "What does our lawnmower look like?" and was visibly weirded out. It's bright green?" "Yeah, it's bright green." I went outside with him and in our locked shed was a very rounded small black electric lawnmower that also didn't work. It was absolutely not the one we had put in the shed last time. It was not the one we bought. Nothing had been tampered with. The lock was still in place. Neither of us have ever seen this mower before, and nobody we could think to ask knew what we were talking about.
This happened around 2018. It was just before 3 p.m. and it was a clear summer day. The sky was totally blue. I was completely sober, as was my mother who was with me, and I feel like I need to preface this as both my mother and I questioned what happened at the time, mostly our sanity. The day started normal. It was around 11 a.m. when my technology started bugging out. Not weird, that could have been caused by anything, but in all honesty, looking back, it added to the strangeness of what was about to happen, related or not. My mother and I went to pick up my younger sister, who's 10, from school, and as I said, this was just before 3 p.m. It's maybe a 15 to 20 minute walk from home to the school. The first 5 minutes were a breeze. I was on the phone talking to a friend, finishing up our conversation, and when I went to hang up, my phone started freaking out. It sounded exactly like that early 2000s noise when you're sat at the computer with speakers and a call comes in. That static, beeping interference noise. I'm not sure how to explain it, but if you lived through those times, you'll know exactly what I mean. Regardless, I put it down to just being another odd thing. Things happen, right? It's whatever. This is where the stranger part happened. I put my phone in my pocket and continued walking with my mom. We walked past a bus stop, and as soon as we walked past it, it was like time stood still. There was a weird cloud. It looked almost like it was a square. The sky turned a dark gray, and like I said, this was a clear summer's day just moments ago with no clouds in sight when we left the house. When we were initially walking up the path, there were plenty of cars and the sound of engines, but when we got to this bus stop, nothing. No cars, no people, which was strange because it was the time that all the kids were coming out of school, and the strangest thing of all was there was no sound of wind or nature at all. I know it makes no sense because of course there wouldn't be wind on a summer's day, but I mean there was no noise at all. Complete silence. It felt like we were walking in a ghost land. It was eerily silent for what should have been lively. I can't put into words how quiet it was. We walked for what felt like hours, and we both felt like we were retracing our steps until we came to the end of the road and things slowly went back to how they were. It felt almost like hiking in a high altitude. As soon as my mother and I walked past that bus stop, it felt like the world stood still and the sky looked entirely different from what we had seen just seconds ago before we walked up to the bus stop. Neither of us can explain it, and we still talk about it every so often. If anyone can explain this at all or tell me about a similar experience of yours, I'd be grateful.
Just a premise. I'm one of the most skeptical people when it comes to the paranormal, and I'm often skeptical about the things on this page. However, I have had one inexplicable experience in my entire life that I have to get off my chest, and I remember it to this day so vividly. I've lived in the same city my entire life in the USA, and there was this Circle K convenience store very close to where I lived. At the time, I knew the same 4 or 5 employees at the store. The store only has one entrance, which also serves as the exit, and the parking lot in front of the store is the only parking lot. The store also only has one bathroom, which is designed for one person at a time. Back in March of 2011, I drove to the Circle K, and right about the same time, this white car next to me pulled up. I'm not sure what kind of car it was, but it was quite a beater, to say the least. Right when I was getting out of the car, the woman driving the white car had gotten out of it. She walked in the Circle K. I took some time to empty out some trash from my car, and I entered the store about a minute later. Keep in mind, this woman hadn't left the store yet, and there was only one entrance, which also served as the exit. Aside from the woman who worked there, I was the only one in the main part of the store, so I just assumed the woman I saw walking from the car was in the bathroom. I got my snacks and went up to the counter. I already knew the clerk well. We would open up to each other about many things, and I had to ask if a woman walked in and was possibly in the bathroom. I just thought it was odd that this woman was using the restroom for close to 10 minutes at this time. Anyway, I described what the woman looked like to the clerk. She was very pale, white, obviously, had black hair, brown eyes, she was medium height, and as soon as I mentioned her, very low waist to hip ratio, she has an abnormally large butt and huge hips and thighs compared to her little waist. The clerk gasped. She told me she knew exactly who I was talking about, and she also told me she was a regular customer. But what she said next to me gives me chills to this day. She told me this woman hadn't entered the store on this day. I told her I saw her walk in right before I did, and she told me she was at the counter and never saw her. We were both baffled. I obviously wasn't seeing things, because the clerk told me I described a regular customer, and this was somebody I had never seen before. When I walked out of the Circle K, her car was still there, so I just sat in my car for 5 minutes, but left, because I didn't want to seem creepy anyway. I never found out if she came back for that car. The only thing I can think of is this woman from the car walked in the store, was doing something shady in the bathroom, maybe drug dealing, drugs, etc., and was in cahoots with the clerk, and the clerk was playing dumb with me. Even though I knew the clerk, this doesn't mean she didn't have any secrets she wouldn't tell me. Other than that, I don't know. She disappeared into thin air.
I was always intrigued by this topic, but never had experienced it myself until today. Well, I think I just experienced my first glitch. So, this afternoon, my partner is out and I'm cooking dinner for one and on dog walking duties. My dog and I eat our dinner, and I take him for a quick toilet break, and then as normal, I clean the kitchen from my messy cooking. I'm washing up and we have these fancy tall glasses that we recently got and love. As I place one of the draining boards to dry, it slightly clips another cup and I hear it smash. Except it doesn't smash. Nothing does and everything is fine. I check as I don't want someone eating or drinking off of something that has broken glass on it or in it, and I equally don't want it dropping on the floor to cut my feet or my dog's paws. I brush it off as being weird and continue washing up, and then decide to move the cups and glasses I've already washed up so I have more room for other large dishes, and then continue to wash up, which includes another one of these fancy glasses. I place it on the draining board to dry. My sponge is all out of soap, so I reach for the liquid and suddenly the glass is flying to the floor and it's smashing. The exact sound that I heard moments ago, except now it's actually broken. I swear, it basically happened in slow motion, or it felt like it did to me. I don't know if this counts as a glitch or not, but it was crazy weird, and I'm still a little confused by it. I didn't knock the glass or touch it, and it wasn't the same glass that I clipped with the other cups that didn't break. Does this sound like a glitch? So, I live in an apartment with my girlfriend and our 4 cats. I moved here last summer and she moved in a few months ago. This has been happening for a while, but lately it's been escalating. We keep some recipe and cookbooks on top of a set of kitchen cabinets, so they're very high up against the wall, almost near the ceiling. Only one of our cats is a slight climber, and because of how the cabinet area is designed, he can't really get up there. There's nothing to hold on to and no space up there for him to fit anyway. Several days ago, we noticed that the topmost cookbook was sliding off of its pile, hanging precariously down as though it were just about to fall. We fixed it, only for this to happen again just a few hours later. The same book, the exact same hanging and almost falling position. The book isn't glossy to where it would slide off of the other books, and we don't have any nearby air vents that would shift it. And besides, it's a heavy book. We've also found kitchen drawers pulled wide open when we come home after both having been out together. We've approached certain rooms to find that their doors, like the bathroom door and the door to my personal room, closed seemingly of their own accord, when we know that after we left those rooms, we had the doors open all the way. We've had objects, like an empty can of vegetables that I know we tossed into the recycling bin and took out to the garbage room, suddenly reappear on the counter when we walk into the kitchen. We've come home to find pictures on the wall suddenly crooked, or one of my music CD booklets on display suddenly turned sideways when I always have it facing front. I've had very dark spiritual experiences in my life, but also plenty of situations where it was just coincidence or there was a very human cause, so I don't want to jump to it's something spiritual, but it's like things are piling up and just becoming harder to explain away, and it's unnerving and confusing. I've considered the possibility that someone is screwing with us, but we always lock our door and the building has good security. Like, you basically need a separate key to even get into the lobby. And plus, there's always a guard on watch downstairs. Our cats may be clever or mischievous, but not to that degree. We're not really sure what's going on. This happened a few months ago. I began to experience a spontaneous Kundalini awakening after some acupuncture treatments. For those of you that don't know what that means, long story short, Kundalini is a form of energy. I think it's chi or prana, etc. But it's like the tap gets turned on full blast and it feels like electricity pulsing through your body. But for me, it's more like swishing water. It can also cause electrical objects to react to you and, in some cases, poltergeist activity. And I think that's what happened here. I have a collection of antique kokeshi dolls from Japan, and one of them is of a small person sitting in the bath. It's beautiful, and it also has a washcloth on its head. A while ago, my daughter was playing with them and accidentally pulled the cloth off of its head, so at the moment it's just resting on there with no adhesive. I took my dolls down off of their shelf to dust them, and when I got to the one that was sitting in the bath, I took its cloth off too to clean it properly, and when I put it back on the shelf, I placed the cloth back on its head. But then it began to spin like it was being pulled by a string until it came to a rest at a certain point. I know it sounds like it could have been wind or a weird angle, but I'm telling you, there was no wind. And it was not a natural gravitational movement either. It was like someone turning a hat until they had it on their head, just how they liked it. It was so bizarre that I just burst out laughing. I've had many paranormal experiences in my life, so this one didn't scare me. I think it was either a trickster having fun with me, a friendly spirit, or maybe the doll has some kind of energy attached to it. Whatever it was, I got a kick out of it. I've cleaned that doll multiple times and it hasn't happened since. Just that one time. Back in 2013, my mom passed away 3 weeks after my daughter was born. We spent 3 days in the funeral home, and each day I brought in my daughter's electric bottle warmer. It's the kind where you put water in, and there's also a plastic ring designed to keep the heat and the steam inside. The last day, I remember in the morning heating a bottle at the funeral home. When it was time to leave, I went to grab my things and I noticed that the plastic ring of the bottle warmer was missing. It's light blue and a bit bigger than the circumference of a baby bottle. Me, my husband, and an employee of the funeral home searched for it everywhere in the room that it was in, but we never found it. I thought it probably fell into the garbage, or somebody might have accidentally taken it. I didn't think it was a big deal, so I just used a dishcloth around the bottle to help keep the steam in. Life goes on. I have to mention, we had a small hatchback car. The trunk was pretty small, so we loaded and unloaded it frequently. Fast forward 4 months after the funerals, I went shopping with a friend and we bought some clothes. We loaded the trunk at the mall with 5 or 6 bags. We arrived at home, opened the trunk, and guess what was there? Perfectly centered on top of our bags, the blue bottle warmer plastic ring. My friend and my husband saw it too. I can't explain what happened. It couldn't have been stuck somewhere in the trunk, and then just fell on the bags because I remember using it at the funeral home the morning that we lost it. And the car's trunk was made, and the fact that we loaded and unloaded it at least 10 times since then. Also, it was perfectly centered on the bags like it was being presented to us. I don't know. What do you think?